Subscribe now, lock your doors, and don't look away, because tonight's story proves that sometimes the most dangerous criminal is the one sleeping beside you. The first sign that something was wrong wasn't the missing money. It was the silence. At exactly 2:17 a.m., a security alarm pierced the quiet of the Shaw family's luxury home in Westport, Connecticut. Motion sensors lit up across the property like a digital heartbeat. Cameras flickered to life. The front gate opened, then closed. No car was registered entering or leaving. Inside the master bedroom, the bed was empty on one side. Victoria Shaw was gone. By 2:25 a.m., the private security firm monitoring the property called the only person listed as emergency contact. Elliot Shaw answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep and confusion. He was in London, finishing a 3-day investment conference. He had left his wife in their $6.8 million home just 48 hours earlier. "Sir," the operator said carefully, "we've detected unusual activity at your residence. Are you expecting anyone?" Elliot sat up in the dark hotel room, heart beginning to pound. "No, my wife is there alone. Did she trigger it?" There was a pause. "Sir, the system shows someone accessed your interior safe room at 2:12 a.m. That woke him completely. The safe room. Only 2 people had access to that biometric vault. Elliot Shaw and his wife, Victoria. "Call the police," he said quietly. Now. Westport police arrived within 9 minutes. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No broken windows. No forced entry. No sign of struggle. Every light downstairs was off. The marble floors gleamed untouched beneath the glow of tactical flashlights as officers moved through the living room, kitchen, and hallway. Then they reached the office. The safe room door stood slightly open. Detective Aaron Keller arrived shortly after, summoned from home. A veteran financial crimes investigator with a reputation for patience and precision, Keller had seen fraud cases before. Embezzlement, hidden assets, corporate theft. But something about the call felt different. Inside the office, 2 officers stood near the open vault, their expressions unreadable. "Detective," one of them said, "you need to see this." Keller stepped inside. The vault itself was massive, a reinforced steel enclosure hidden behind what looked like a wall of bookshelves. It required fingerprint, retinal scan, and a 6-digit code. Elliot Shaw had installed it to store sensitive documents, hard drives, and emergency cash reserves. Now it stood open and empty. Every shelf inside was cleared. The document cases were gone. Jewelry boxes gone. Hard drives gone. And the cash, $2 million in bundled emergency currency, gone. Keller exhaled slowly. "Any signs of forced entry?" he asked. "None," the officer replied. "System logs show authorized biometric access at 2:12 a.m. Keller turned toward the hallway. "And the wife?" "Not here." He walked through the house personally, checking each room. Master bedroom, walk-in closet, bathroom, guest rooms, kitchen, garage. Victoria Shaw's car was still parked in the driveway. Her phone sat charging on the nightstand. Her passport was missing. So was she. By sunrise, Elliot Shaw was on a private jet back to Connecticut. He landed just after 10 a.m., pale and visibly shaken as he stepped into the police briefing room. Tall, controlled, impeccably dressed even after an overnight flight, he looked like a man who had spent his life in control of numbers and outcomes, not chaos. Detective Keller watched him carefully. "Mr. Shaw," Keller began, "when was the last time you spoke to your wife?" Elliot swallowed. "Last night, around 9 p.m., my time." She sounded normal. "Asked about my flight back tomorrow." "Any mention of travel plans?" "No." "Financial concerns? Marital issues?" Elliot hesitated. Just for a second. Keller noticed. "We were discussing a separation," Elliot admitted quietly. "Nothing finalized. Just conversations." "How recent?" 3 weeks. The room shifted subtly. Keller leaned forward. "Did Victoria know about the contents of the safe room?" "Yes, of course." "Did she know the total amount stored inside?" Another pause. "Yes." Keller folded his hands. "Mr. Shaw," he said carefully, "your wife accessed the safe room at 2:12 a.m. using authorized biometrics. She removed approximately $2 million in cash and several digital storage devices. There is no sign of forced entry. No evidence of a third party." Elliot stared at him. "No," he said immediately. "That's impossible. Victoria wouldn't." He stopped himself. "Wouldn't what?" "Wouldn't leave? Wouldn't steal? Wouldn't plan?" Keller watched realization begin to creep across the man's face. When did you last check your primary accounts? Keller asked. Elliot blinked. Yesterday morning. What? Please check again. Hands trembling slightly, Elliot pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. The screen loaded. He entered his credentials. Waited. Then his face went white. The numbers were wrong. Not slightly wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Detective, his voice cracked. This has to be an error. How much is missing? Elliot couldn't speak for a moment. His throat tightened as he stared at the screen. 2.3 million, he whispered. Silence filled the room. Wire transfers. Liquidated accounts. Emergency funds drained. Quietly, methodically moved over the past 6 weeks. All authorized. All legal access. All under one name. Victoria Shaw. Keller stood slowly. When was the divorce discussion scheduled to become official? He asked. Monday, Elliot said faintly. We were filing Monday. Keller exchanged a glance with another detective. Then he turned back to Elliot. Mr. Shaw, your wife didn't just leave. She's been preparing for this for weeks. He placed a printed document on the table. A surveillance still from a private bank in Manhattan, timestamped 6:40 p.m. the previous evening. Victoria Shaw stood at the counter, elegant and composed, signing a withdrawal authorization. Across from her sat a man Keller didn't recognize. Mid-40s. Dark coat. Baseball cap pulled low. Watching. Waiting. Who was that? Keller asked quietly. Elliot leaned closer. And for the first time since entering the room, genuine fear crossed his face. I don't know, he whispered. But that's not the first time I've seen him. Keller's eyes narrowed. Where have you seen him before? Elliot swallowed hard. 3 months ago, he said slowly. Outside our house. Victoria told me he was just a delivery driver, but he stayed there for almost an hour, sitting in a parked car, watching the house. The room went still. Keller looked back at the surveillance photo, then at Elliot. Mr. Shaw, he said quietly, I don't think your wife ran away alone. He slid another document across the table, a newly flagged international wire transfer. Destination, Zurich, Switzerland. Account holder, VS, Holdings. Authorized cosigner, unknown. But what froze everyone in the room wasn't the amount. It was the timestamp, 2:16 a.m. For minutes after Victoria opened the safe room, someone else accessed Elliot Shaw's offshore accounts from inside the house. By noon, the Shaw residence had transformed from a pristine symbol of wealth into an active crime scene. Unmarked vehicles lined the quiet Westport Street. Neighbors watched through curtains as forensic teams moved in and out of the modern glass mansion carrying evidence bags and sealed boxes. Inside, the air felt heavy, as if the house itself understood it had become the center of something far darker than a domestic dispute. Detective Aaron Keller stood in the office where the safe room remained open, staring at the biometric access log projected on a tablet. 2:12 a.m. Victoria Shaw, authorized entry. 2:14 a.m. Secondary login detected. 2:16 a.m. Offshore account access confirmed. The secondary login was the problem. It didn't belong to Elliot Shaw. Keller tapped the screen again. Run that sequence once more. A tech analyst replayed the data. The biometric system showed Victoria's fingerprint and retinal scan unlocking the vault. But immediately after, a second access code had been entered from the internal security console, a code tied to administrative override. Who has admin privileges? Keller asked. The analyst hesitated. Only 2 users on record, Mr. Shaw and Mrs. Shaw. Keller's jaw tightened. Then how do we have a third code? No one answered. Across the hall, Elliot Shaw sat at the dining table, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from business partners, attorneys, and financial advisors. He ignored all of them. $2.3 million gone. $2 million more in cash vanished. And a wife who had disappeared without a word. Detective Keller approached him slowly. Mr. Shaw, I need you to think carefully. Has Victoria had access to your administrative security codes? Elliot shook his head immediately. No, never. Those were confidential, even from her. Did anyone else ever enter this house with extended access? Contractors, consultants, friends? No one, Elliot said firmly. Then he hesitated. Except, Keller leaned forward slightly. Except who? There was a financial consultant she hired last year, Elliot said. Said she wanted independent advice. Someone to protect her interests if the marriage ended. Keller's eyes sharpened. Name? Elliot swallowed. Daniel Hargrove. The name meant nothing to Keller, yet. Do you have contact information? Elliot nodded weakly and reached for his phone. I met him once. Briefly. He seemed professional, quiet, observant. Did he ever come into this house? Yes, Elliot said. Twice. Victoria invited him. I didn't think anything of it. Keller stepped away immediately and signaled to the tech team. Pull everything on Daniel Hargrove. Financial licenses, travel records, known associates. Now, within 40 minutes, the first shock arrived. There is no licensed financial consultant named Daniel Hargrove in Connecticut, the analyst reported, or New York, or any neighboring state. Keller frowned. Maybe an alias. Dig deeper. The analyst kept typing, running facial recognition against the surveillance still from the Manhattan bank. 10 seconds passed, then 20, then the screen pinged. Detective, we've got a hit. Keller moved closer. On the screen appeared a match from a European fraud database. Same face, slightly older photo, different name. Lucas Varenne, French national, flagged in multiple financial manipulation investigations across Belgium, Switzerland, and Spain. No convictions, no arrests. Always gone before authorities closed in. Professional ghost, Keller muttered. And now he's here. He turned back toward Elliot, who looked up anxiously. Do you recognize this man under another name? Lucas Varenne. Elliot leaned forward, studying the image. His face drained of color. Yes, he whispered. That's him. That's Daniel. Keller nodded once. Your wife didn't hire a consultant. She hired a specialist. The case landed on my desk like a ghost. Victoria Shaw, wife of tech mogul Elliot Shaw, vanished without a trace. The Upper East Side penthouse was pristine, almost sterile. Her walk-in closet was the first clue, a cavern of empty hangers and vacant shoe racks. Every designer label, every silk scarf, gone. It wasn't a kidnapping, it was a meticulous erasure. Tucked away in a study drawer, I found it, a small leather-bound notebook. Inside, in elegant script, were plans, lists, schedules, calculations. And on the final page, 2 chilling words, Phase 2, departure. This wasn't a disappearance, it was an escape. My analyst, a wizard with numbers, started digging. She found a series of complex wire transfers, a financial spiderweb that spanned continents. The final thread led to a holding company in Buenos Aires. The amounts were staggering, enough to fund a new life 10 times over. As she worked, she sent over a file. Grainy surveillance footage from a private hangar at JFK. The timestamp was 2 days before Victoria was reported missing. There she was, looking calm, almost serene, stepping onto the tarmac. And she wasn't alone. With her was a man I recognized from old case files. Lucas Varenne, a notorious fixer for the global elite, a ghost who specialized in making people disappear. They boarded a Gulfstream G650, its tail number unregistered. They were ghosts taking flight. I drove back to the Shaw penthouse. Elliot met me at the door, his face a mask of sleepless anxiety. He was still clinging to hope, convinced it was a ransom situation. I had to deliver the blow. Mr. Shaw, I said, my voice softer than I intended. Your wife. She's left the country. With another man. The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel. He sank into a chair, his composure shattering. That's when I noticed it. On the mantelpiece was their wedding photo, a picture of beaming smiles and hopeful futures. I looked closer. In the photo, a massive diamond glittered on Victoria's finger. But in the surveillance footage from the airport, her hand was bare. The ring, a symbol of their life together, was gone, just like everything else. The final piece of the puzzle arrived via a secure message from an Interpol contact. He'd run the name Lucas Varenne, but he also ran the facial recognition data from the JFK footage. Victoria Shaw wasn't just a name, it was a shell. The system flagged her face against multiple identities. A French art dealer named Sophie Dubois, an Italian heiress, Isabella Rossi, a Brazilian socialite, Clara Mendes. Each identity came with a complete backstory, a flawless history, and each one had vanished after marrying into immense wealth. It was a long con, a masterpiece of deception played out on an international stage. The woman Elliot Shaw thought he knew had never existed. I stood there in the silent penthouse, the city lights twinkling below, and all I could hear was the echo of her name. Victoria Shaw, a ghost who had just pulled off the perfect vanishing act. The case wasn't closed. It had just blown wide open. The realization settled over Detective Aaron Keller like a slow, suffocating fog. Victoria Shaw wasn't running from a divorce. She had been running her entire life. By evening, the investigation had shifted from financial theft to international identity fraud. The house in Westport was no longer just a crime scene. It was the starting point of a global manhunt. Keller stood in the command center as screens filled with images of the same woman under different names. Victoria Shaw, Isabella Vance, Marina Kovac, Elena Moretti. Each identity came with a different passport, different hair color, different country of residence. But the biometric markers were undeniable. The same woman had moved through Europe and North America for over a decade, leaving behind carefully planned financial devastation wherever she went. And no criminal convictions? Keller asked. The analyst shook his head. None. Investigations opened, then stalled. Victims embarrassed. Settlements reached quietly. She disappears before charges stick. Elliot Shaw sat silently at the far end of the room, staring at the screen. Each new image of his wife felt like another blow to the chest. I don't understand, he whispered. 10 years. I lived with her for 10 years. Keller didn't respond immediately. He was reading through a timeline that now stretched across continents. 10 years ago, London. 6 years ago, Milan. 3 years ago, Vancouver. 1 year ago, New York. Each location tied to a wealthy partner. Each partner connected to significant financial loss. None publicly reported. She doesn't target randomly, Keller said finally. She studies, builds trust, marries or binds legally, then waits for the right moment. Elliot's voice trembled. So I was just next. Keller met his eyes. You were the long game. Interpol issued a red notice within hours. Argentine authorities were alerted. Private charter companies flagged. Financial institutions monitored for movement of the stolen funds. But Keller knew they were chasing professionals. Lucas Varenne and the woman known as Victoria Shaw had executed something near perfect. Every transfer layered, every exit timed, every identity prepared long before the divorce papers were filed. Still, professionals made one mistake. They got comfortable. Detective, the analyst called out. We've got movement. All eyes turned to the central screen. One of the offshore accounts used in the transfer chain had just been accessed. Not withdrawn, accessed. A login ping from Buenos Aires. Keller stepped closer. Can we trace it? Working on it, the analyst said, fingers flying across the keyboard. It's routed through multiple VPN layers, but there's a delay. That means real-time access from a physical terminal. Seconds ticked by like hours. Then a location appeared. Internet Cafe. Palermo District, the analyst said. Camera feeds incoming. Grainy surveillance footage filled the screen. A dimly lit cafe. Rows of computers. Late evening. Few customers. Then the door opened. Victoria walked in first. She looked different. Darker hair. Casual clothing. No jewelry. But the posture, calm, controlled, was unmistakable. Behind her came Lucas Varenne, scanning the room briefly before taking a seat at a terminal. Elliot leaned forward unconsciously. That's them. Keller watched carefully. They're checking balances, he murmured, making sure everything landed. Can local authorities move in? An officer asked. Keller shook his head. Not yet. If they spook them now, they vanish again. We need confirmation of identity and coordination with Argentine Federal Police. On screen, Victoria sat beside Lucas, speaking softly. She didn't look like a fugitive. She looked peaceful. For the first time since the case began, Keller understood something chilling. She wasn't desperate. She was starting over. Argentine authorities moved in 15 minutes later. Unmarked vehicles surrounded the block. Plainclothes officers entered the cafe from both sides. Quiet, coordinated, precise. Inside, Lucas noticed first. His fingers paused over the keyboard. His eyes lifted slightly toward the reflection in the dark screen. He saw the officers approaching behind him. He didn't run. He simply leaned back and whispered something to Victoria. She turned slowly. For a moment, she looked directly into the cafe's security camera. The same calm expression she'd worn walking into the private terminal days earlier.
Then she stood. Argentine federal officers approached cautiously. Senora, por favor, permanezca tranquila. Victoria raised her hand slightly, not in panic but in acknowledgement. Lucas did the same. No struggle, no chaos, just surrender. Within minutes, both were escorted out of the cafe and into separate vehicles. Across the ocean, in the Westport Command Center, a quiet exhale moved through the room. Elliot's shoulders sagged as if gravity had finally caught up with him. It's over, he said softly. Keller didn't answer. Because something about the footage bothered him, he replayed the arrest clip again, slowed it down, focused on Victoria's face as officers approached. There it was again, that faint smile, not relief, not fear, something else. Almost satisfaction. Detective, the analyst asked. Extradition proceedings will begin immediately. Financial recovery teams are already freezing remaining assets. Keller nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed on the screen. Zoom in on her left wrist, he said. The analyst complied. A thin bracelet, metallic, minimalist. Keller's expression darkened. That wasn't in any prior surveillance. So? The analyst asked. Keller leaned closer. Run object recognition. See if it matches any known communication devices. Seconds passed. Then the analyst inhaled sharply. It's a micro-storage bracelet, encrypted data drive, high-end, military-grade concealment. Silence filled the room. What kind of data? Elliot asked quietly. The analyst swallowed. Potentially financial records, identities, offshore access keys, entire account structures. Keller straightened slowly. If Victoria Shaw carried that data, then the money they had traced, the millions Elliot lost, might be only a fraction of something far bigger. A network, multiple victims, years of operations. And if she had protected that data well enough, there was a chance authorities would never fully access it. On the screen, Victoria stepped into the police vehicle. Just before the door closed, she glanced once more toward the cafe camera, toward the world watching. And she smiled again, not like someone caught. Like someone who still held the final move. 3 months later, the extradition battle continued in international courts. Financial recovery teams retrieved only a portion of the missing funds. The encrypted bracelet remained locked, its contents inaccessible despite global cybercrime efforts. Victoria Shaw, or whatever her real name truly was, sat in a high-security detention facility, calm and silent, refusing all interviews. Lucas Varenne did the same. Elliot Shaw rebuilt what remained of his life quietly, far from cameras and headlines. But investigators across 3 continents kept working, convinced that the truth hidden inside that bracelet could expose a web of deception far larger than anyone imagined. Because sometimes, catching the criminals doesn't end the story. Sometimes, it only proves how much they're still hiding. And somewhere behind reinforced glass and guarded walls, a woman with a dozen names waited patiently, as if she knew something the rest of the world didn't. If you think this case was shocking, you're not ready for what comes next.